The senator from Oregon.
Madam President, the Democrats on this side believe that climate change is a real and urgent problem. The Republican leader seems to believe it's not a problem at all. The Majority Leader has scheduled votes today on a version of the Green New Deal. I was proud to be a sponsor of that. I want to make sure that nobody believes what's happening today on this floor is part of a serious debate. The fact is, it is a sham debate about the growing and urgent problem of climate change. The Green New Deal is all about offering a mission statement, a statement of direction on the urgency of climate change. It's about recognizing the staggering threat and encouraging everybody to come forward to bring up good ways to tackle it. As the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee will outline just one of them this afternoon. It's a bill. It's a resolution. Excuse me, it's not a bill, it's a resolution. And that is why it is a head-scratcher to hear all these far-fetched attacks on the Green New Deal in the media and here on this floor. So let's be clear about what the Green New Deal says, this resolution. Nobody is out there banning cheeseburgers. If you want to eat an ice cream sandwich and wash it down with a milkshake, nobody is going to be taking that milkshake out of your hands either. I don't know what this anti-food legislation is that I keep hearing opponents talk about, but it certainly isn't the Green New Deal. And I'll tell you that my son, William Peter Wyden, age 11, is specifically going to make sure that his papa doesn't sign on to something like that. So there is no building trains to Hawaii, nobody banning airplanes, nobody trying to take people's cars. The Green New Deal is about bringing good ideas to bear in the fight against climate change. That's what the American people are demanding action on. I will tell you, this issue comes up at every town hall meeting that I hold. Just over the last week, I was in rural counties where Donald Trump won by an enormous percentage. And people understood what climate change was all about because of these wildfires we've had. Madam President, these are not your grandfather's wildfires. These are infernos. We've had them leap the Columbia River. They're more powerful. They're more dangerous. Fire season isn't just for a couple months in the summer. It's almost year-round. In my home state, we've had to get used to what amounts to clean air refugees when fires burn near populated areas where folks, particularly folks who are of modest income, have literally nowhere to go and can't go outside. Anybody who hasn't been to the Columbia River Gorge should know that when a fire leaps the Columbia River, you're talking about something very different. Very, very different. And rivers have historically blocked the spread of wildfires. Not anymore. Last year, dozens of people were killed and more than 10,000 structures destroyed by the fire camp. The most destructive, Camp Fire, the most destructive fire in California history. These infernos are happening across the West, Washington, Nevada, Colorado, Montana, and elsewhere. And climate change isn't just about fires. It drives extreme temperatures in both directions. Extreme cold is a danger to millions of people during the winter. Warmer temperatures in spring and summer bring more rain and more floods to so much of the country. Elsewhere, especially in the West, the threat of drought looms continuously. The hurricanes battering the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico are intensifying. It seems like every week another group a prominent scientist warns about mass extinction events, ecological failures, and runaway temperature increases. And there are great economic impacts as a result of all this. Americans, when they face a future of extreme temperatures, bigger storms, and hotter fires, mean that it will cost more money to rebuild a city that's been flooded by a hurricane or burned in an inferno. We're going to see increases in insurance premiums go up when weather-related damage becomes more common. And if you really want to know how serious this problem is, look at these private insurance premiums. The market is telling us how serious this problem is. It requires more energy to heat and cool homes and workplaces in extreme temperatures. Now, I want to close with just one last point, Madam President, because I think there is a little bit of confusion about the direction the Senate ought to go. Now, I've mentioned that the Green New Deal is really a mission statement. It's a resolution, a sense of urgency that we ought to be all about. And I want to contrast that with the original New Deal, which was actual legislation, something like 15 bills, certainly more than a dozen major ones. My sense is that's what Congress is going to have to do in the years ahead with respect to climate. So let me give an example. We've talked about the mission of the resolution, where we'd like to go. Here's an example of what we ought to work together on with respect to legislation. I pointed out as a senior Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, there are more than 40 separate tax breaks for energy on the federal tax books. 40 separate tax breaks for energy. Many of them, in fact, the tax code as it relates to energy is essentially anchored in dirty energy tax relics of yesteryear. What I have proposed, given the fact that taxpayers now write out big annual checks to the dirtiest energy companies, is that we replace that. You can't stand up to climate change as long as you're ladling out all of those tax subsidies to dirty energy. So what I have proposed is taking those 40-plus energy tax breaks and basically just throwing them in the trash can. In effect, throwing them into the trash can that's right next to our desk. And then we would substitute for those 40 energy tax breaks that are disproportionately for dirty energy, 3 new ones. 1 for clean energy, 1 for clean transportation fuel, and 1 for energy efficiency. And I like to think that Democrats and Republicans playing off this idea are going to be able to say, hey, we can find common ground on this, because what it would mean for companies all across the country, when they buy a new piece of equipment for their company, they're invariably going to make sure it's cleaner and more energy efficient than what's on their factory floor. So they would qualify for 2 out of the 3 new energy incentives I'm talking about. That's something we could have a real debate on. That's not a sham debate. That's a real debate. Yesterday, Senator Alexander, our Republican colleague from the President of the Senate's state, came to the floor. Senator Alexander said he believes climate change is real. He said he believes it's caused by man, and he called for a new Manhattan Project for clean energy. I heard it. Sounds like he's got plenty of ideas that could make for a real debate between Democrats and Republicans. Senator Alexander sits right over there, not far from our colleague from Iowa, Senator Ernst. He's talking about real ideas after acknowledging that climate change is a problem and that man contributes to it. I hope some of my colleagues on the other side will follow Senator Alexander's lead. That's a debate the Senate ought to have. It ought to have a debate about what Senator Alexander is talking about. We ought to have a debate about throwing the 40 separate tax breaks for energy in the garbage and substituting for them 3 new ones that reflect our most current challenges. That's the way the Senate is supposed to function. You recognize a problem, you come forward with ideas in a serious debate, and you try to build common ground. I see my colleague from Iowa, here. I'm interested in working with her. We've worked together on other issues, and I'm interested in working with all of my colleagues, as I have with respect to this question of making the tax code neutral with respect to energy sources. We're not doing that today. What we're doing is playing a political game, and I will say to my colleagues, nobody ought to take part in this political game. You don't play political games when the consequences for the American people are so serious. You have instead a serious debate about what to do about the serious problem. That is not what is going on, not what's going on today. And I'm going to close by saying, years into the future, our children and our grandchildren are going to deal with the consequences of inaction. And they're going to look at something like this debate, so-called, because I call it a sham debate, and they are going to be angry. The American people deserve a lot better than this kind of fake debate that is being held on the Senate floor right now. I want to make it clear, as a senior Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, I am very interested in working with my colleagues on real and bipartisan approaches to deal with this staggering challenge. That's not what we're having today. Our country is going to regret it.